And she shows that size off on her with those long tail feathers and that big head and beak to match. Now that beak on Chloe is very useful for her because not only will she use it as another foot, so when those 2 feet on her are busy, she'll use that beak to climb up even higher into those trees. But she also uses that beak back. Well, thank you, Chloe, so much for coming out and seeing us today. Bye-bye. Now for our next friend, this right here is actually Chloe's neighbor. This here is Bebop. And Bebop, she's going to be our prehensile-tailed porcupine. Now I know that she may not look like those porcupines that we see here or there in Africa. Those really big ones, of course, are very, very sharp. Now with Bebop, she does live really high up in the trees in South America. How you can tell that is she has those curved hands and feet that allow her to grip onto these branches as well as that rope as well. But if you guys can see, she also has that very, very long tail. Now that tail is her prehensile tail. So what that means is it's basically another foot for her. So as you can see, she has it wrapped around right around that rope. It does help keep her balanced, especially high up in those trees when the wind is blowing. But with these guys, they can't swing from their tail back and forth like monkeys can. It is just used for that nice balance. Now I know I used to believe that these porcupines, they could shoot those quills out at us if they got a little bit afraid. But I will say that is a myth. And for Bebop's quills, they actually need pressure to actually come out of her body. So if she was ever feeling threatened, what she would do is she would puff up those quills really big, and then she would run backwards into her predator and then make contact with their face. And as I mentioned, all of those quills are very, very sharp. And they're actually curved on the end of it, difficult to get out. Now Bebop's Ellie, and Ellie, she's our red-legged Sarima. Now, unlike Chloe, who eats all those different types of nuts and seeds, Ellie here is what's called a predatory bird, which means that she eats different types of small mammals and reptiles multiple times. That actually helps tenderize her prey, so then she can break it up into nice tiny pieces. But if y'all can see, she actually has a very sharp back toenail, and that allows her to grip onto that prey as well, so then she can tear it up with that sharp beak. Now with those really long legs on Ellie, she can actually run up to about 40 miles per hour on land. So she is quite the fast runner. But with Ellie here, she also can jump up to about 6 to 8 feet tall. And that allows her to grab all those different insects or even mammals from really high up in the trees. Now there are going to be 2 types of Sarimas out there in the world. There is the red-legged, just like Ellie, and then there's the black-legged. Now the only difference between the 2 are the colors on those legs. Ellie here, she has those orangish kind of red legs, and those black-legged will have those nice black legs. Well, thank you, Ellie, so much for coming out and seeing us today. Doesn't do any of that. As I mentioned, she lives high up in the trees in South America. Just like Bebop, she has those curved hands and feet that allow her to grip onto those branches as well as Ryan's hand. But if you do notice on her, she has that very long like it is today. She'll just wrap that tail right around that tree branch, and it helps keep her balanced. But if you do notice, she actually doesn't have any fur on the end of the tail. That allows her Right, and Tortellini, he's going to be our sulcata tortoise. Now he has another name called the African spur tortoise, and that will tell you 2 things about him. That he is from that nice Africa region, and those spurs as well. If you actually look at the back half of Tortellini's body, right near those back legs, he has really sharp spurs that stick right out. What those spurs do is it helps protect him out in the wild. Because these guys are actually very good diggers. They can dig burrows up to about the golf ball, so super tiny. Because of that time as well, Tortellini here, he will actually live up to about 150 years old. So if you ever wanted one as a pet, you have to have kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids to pass that tortoise down through generations. Because he is our big royalty here.
Oh, I love him.
Yes, thank you. Now Toulouse, he is not only one of the largest species of vulture, but he is also the most colorful. If y'all can see on the top of his head, he has those reds, those orange, and even some black as well. No. Yeah, if you guys could take a seat real quick, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Toulouse here, he has a very, very sharp beak and very sharp claws as well. But as I was mentioning with the colors on his head, it actually allows him to get more light and nutrients in from that nice sunlight. But if you do notice, he actually doesn't have any feathers on the top of his head. That's because when these guys eat, well, they eat carcasses out in the wild. And what they will do is they will stick their whole head right into that carcass and become very messy. So not having a lot of feathers on the top of their head just prevents any sort of bacteria from growing. Now these guys, of course, as I mentioned, they eat different types of carcasses, so some other animals out in the wild. And with these guys, some of their prey items, well, they die from natural causes or even diseases. But Toulouse's stomach acid is as strong as battery acid, so it will actually kill any sort of disease that enters his body, even rabies. So he actually can't catch anything from the prey that he does eat. Now with these vulture species, usually they find their food using their sense of smell, but Toulouse here, he actually uses his sense of sight instead. So he looks around, finds all those different other vultures out in the wild, flies on down as he showed off, and since he is the king, they all run away, and then he gets a nice tasty snack. But thanks, Toulouse.